Thank you very much, Zoila, especially for the efficient time use. The Peruvian experience is very interesting about an institution primarily focused on budgetary and financial issues to undertake a fundamental participation on disaster risk management. We are going to give the floor to Dr. Carlos Ivan Marquez, who is the General Director of the Unit for Disaster Risk Management of Colombia. And he is going to talk to us about also a normative institutional reform of this country that also goes aligned with planning of safe development.
Okay. Okay, so good afternoon, all of you. I also have a good news for you. The hall is almost full, and so we have about 15 minutes for our friend from Mexico and what I have to present. So I'm going to try and make some comments on good practices in terms of adopting policies, integral policies for risk management. And also I will tell you that I used to say here we like green very much, but when we have entities that do the follow-up and assessment activities in such a way as professional as the IDB does, that's not done overnight, and it is done with thanks to certain mechanisms that are in place on a local and global level. So two fundamental comments that I want to mention about the opportunity to discuss adoption of policies on public risk reduction. And we need to look at opportunities, and we need to have some determination. So let's not forget the Here Go framework, which is a world commitment, and based on that, that's our basis. This is key, and we need to reflect on that. We cannot expect to wait for the period to expire and then we'll see if we comply or if we come close to it. We have to work on that, and that has to be connected to fundamental things that have to do with the decision of risks and management and decisions. And so platforms, regional platforms and strategies. In Santa Marta a few years ago we were talking about from theory to practice, and we need to realize that we need to forget about only so much consulting. We just need to have is that what consultants are turning in, we need to use and apply and practice, and that's practice means when the community and the sectors are already impacting or generating what each country is looking for. In our case, we need to understand that Colombia needs to become less vulnerable and have more resilient communities. And the other thing is the wills and opportunities, but realistic. In this case, when we speak about adopting a policy for risk management, we need to realize that we need to be on an emergency situation that is very large, like 2011, the Niña phenomenon, and we had to really analyze and look at and put together all the actors of the whole country, and we needed to evaluate instruments that need to be used and applied and find opportunity mechanisms. Those are opportunities, but the determination is something that not only the leaders of the country that they need to put out, but also the state and the relations that this state has with the rest of the global scheme. In our case, in Colombia, when we talk about adopting an integral policy, is coherence of this scheme with the national development plan. And so when you see the green, it means that this is part of elemental items, and it's one of the elements of the national development plans, and has some goals that have to be delivered. And that's what we're referring to when we say about a political will of a particular government. But we also need other elements, and that's the will of the context, of the general context of the country itself, so that it can become a law, that they can have some norms. I'm not an attorney, but I realize that if you look at the norms, schemes, everything has to do with the general view and how do you arrive at this nor at these norms based on common law and the habits and the customs, and then these things have to become three basic tenets, which are, in our case, the technicians, the experts, and the government are important. In the case of for risk management, in particular, the current government that is headed by the President of the Republic is the visionary that is marking the ways. A few days ago, we won an award in Colombia, which is called Award to Quality, Brand, and Good Practices. And this is something that is going to go over to Asia and other regions. And whose initiative is this? Well, there is always a leader. In our case, it's the President of the Republic who had an initiative, and this continues. But this initiative is called Will and Vision, and has other components, and people who make the laws, the Congress, the lawmakers, the Congress. And when we talk about ourselves and sector members, but we forget that the topic has to be raised and submitted at all levels, and you cannot talk about laws and do anything until and when you have already gone to the lawmakers and approached them. So once we had a terrible winter season, and when we figured that we needed some norms, and we had all the international instruments because we always had the international tools, and then in the country, then what we have to do is bring it down to localize it. And we led the process, and it was one of the most interesting things to discuss it in Congress. I have no political background, but it was very satisfactory to discuss this in Congress for the topic, and to be approached and be enshrined into a law that will adopt a holistic policy based on three fundamental elements. And these are the knowledge of risk, the risk reduction, and disaster management, which is what we are here evaluating and assessing. But for many, it's an ideal thing. For others, it's something it should be, and for others, it's already a task. In Colombia, we're working on these parameters with cross sections and lines and things that have to do with communication and with ensuring the integral point of view as such, and with all these fundamentals that we have today. On the other hand, it is important for us to say how things have to be put into work. It depends on how this depended upon the ministries, and there was no capacity to cooperate, to coordinate interinstitutionally in between sectors. Intersectoral coordination was impossible, and to be able to offer support, and still this was at the government level. But then, forget about the private sector, but in this law, at the margin of this law, in parallel, there was another law created that would offer another kind of structure that was very presidential, and the one who is heading the system of this system in Colombia is the President of the Republic. They have a national council, and they have a national unit for risk management, and this is being replicated in a structural scheme in accordance with our constitution towards the regions and governors and the provinces and states. So today we can say, according to these great experiences, that the ones who coordinate the system is a unit, and this particular unit is coherent to the norm, to the policy and development, and it has to be in this regard. It is important to share that in order for this whole scheme to be developed, there are several fundamental norms that must regulate the schemes. In this case, for us, Colombia, the important thing is the support by volunteers, and they have now a norm, a law that gives them guarantees, and that are also demanding. As we said, this law went into effect 2 years ago, and of course there are some systems that have to do with the firefighters, and has also a very important participation in this particular scheme. So now, in discussing this scheme, we are also devising a whole strategy based on what the law that adopts this policy has to give us the present and the future, the guidelines for that. And we cannot say that the norms are resolving the media situation. No, this norm is made based on a scheme that will enable the country to have at least 6 fundamental elements that have specific objectives, and that's how you localize it into the country. And the question in Colombia is where you headed towards in the next few years. So we know that for 2015 you have a national plan, and the elements are to improve knowledge of the disaster risk in national territory, to reduce construction of new risk conditions, to reduce current conditions of the risk and disasters. And we also have also gender equality and protection, financial protection, cultural diversity protection. So these are all elements that we need to understand, that the national government through the system will actually pave the road for the future. And this is the final thought. For Colombia to change its scheme of being less vulnerable or to becoming resilient, it has to activate all of the schemes for all the stakeholders. And today it's a great honor to know and a pride to know that most of one of the examples in this platform is Colombia, and I have found that the educational representations have been activated. That is the private sector, the corporate sector, the government. Oh, sorry. But with an objective, with an initial objective, which is to have this as a holistic approach to this. And currently, all sectors in the country begin to regulate and localize what the law mandates. And so in Colombia, we are seeing already the final process of these schemes of territorialization and the use of soils. And that is the part that has to do with urban planning. And we have been constructing risks historically, and that is being built by the community, private, and public sectors, because in many opportunities the three things get combined. But when you have a norm, then we continue to generate risks. Today, under this norm, what is going on is a reduction, a prospective reduction, which is part of the joint analysis that we have made, so that we can, in a precise and accurate manner, without as much diagnose, the mayors themselves, and we have a very important representation of mayors in this room, that they can have elements for their planning, municipal planning, to be supported by and have less vulnerability at their cities. I had a short video to show you, but since we have no more time, I will, and to give the floor to my colleague from Mexico, I'll be happy to offer you the information through the website that is available for all. But there are two key elements here to go from theory to practice. That requires determination, human beings, determination, and victims. And we need to always focus on the victims and prevent more victims from people from becoming victims. Thank you.